So I think we are ready to start this 3D Experience Edu webinar, 3D CAD design and simulation for engineering students on cloud-based platform. My name is Martin Velroos and I'm PLM sales manager here in RAND Finland, and I'm like a host in this. So I will just shortly present RAND Finland as a company. So RAND Finland Oy, we are a Finnish expert organization focused on sales, training and consulting of Dassault Systemes PLM products in Finland and the Baltic countries. We have a domestic and international cooperation network and owned by management. We are around 20 people in 4 different locations in Finland, and we have engineering companies as a customer here in Finland. We are also responsible of the academic markets here in Finland, and we always like to focus a little bit of this. And that's why we organize this webinar, and we are very lucky that we got this is Tamara Monti as a Dassault Systems edu expert to speak us about this platform and which are the benefits and advantages for the universities and students to use this kind of platform. So I'm going to now share to speech to Tamara. So please be welcome to ask questions through the QA session. So you are free to write questions there. So just now I will let you, Tamara, to start the presentation. Be welcome.
Thank you very much, Martin. Thank you. And let me start sharing my screen. I hope you all can see it. Perfect. Thanks, Martin. So thank you very much again also for inviting me and to have the possibility to talk to all of you about 3D Experience platform for education, for our not only engineering students, normally, I mean, this is the main target, but in general, all the students that are going to use CAD designs and simulations for essentially learning about model-based engineering design. I'm Tamara Monti. I'm the Euro North educational sales leader. So essentially myself and my team are responsible for selling educational products to our academic customers as well as research customers in the Nordics, so such as yours, in Benelux, in the Benelux region, UK, Ireland. So we cover many different countries with many different academic environment, which is absolutely great. So today in our hour that we're going to spend together, I'm going to talk about a quick introduction about 3D Experience platform and why using it on for educational purposes. I know that some of you already are proficient users of 3D Experience platform, so hopefully then after the introduction, I will have the chance to share and show to you what 3D Experience means, what it is, the 3D Experience platform, and to share some management and capability demonstrations, hopefully live on our platform tenant. Then a bit more information about the migration path, or at least to show to you what it is to migrate from CATIA V5 if you are already users of CATIA V5, if you are already teaching or having a research project that are exploiting CATIA V5, how you can seamlessly move towards 3D Experience platform collaborative design, where essentially you have the same capabilities as you have in CATIA V5 but with much more, because because of course then you can exploit the collaborative environment and unified integrated environment that is 3DEXPERIENCE platform. So that's why I say the new project-based learning. Then we will cover a bit more about learning and teaching materials, and in particular about EDU communities that you might or might not know, but you have already available. You can already go there if you are already our DS customers, and you can already benefit from peer-to-peer support, peer-to-peer discussions, and also from that's the way basically where you get the Dassault Systemes support. But I'll show you in a second. Then we will be talking and wrapping up our discussion, highlighting what are the key benefits of 3DEXPERIENCE platform for the usage on education. If at any time, as Martin already introduced, if you, at any time you have any questions, please type it in the chat, and at the end of this presentation, I will be happy to answer any question. So let's see what it is, the 3DEXPERIENCE platform for education, and why it is very important for the Dassault Systemes. So 3DEXPERIENCE EDU is the brand, the sub-brand in the Dassault System that basically is specifically focusing on developing 3DEXPERIENCE platform features for educational, for educators, and for students. So if you see below, the numbers are pretty clear. We already serve 6.5 million students per year, which is great. We are present in 60,000 academic institutions worldwide. And when we talk about learning and teaching material, we already have 270,000 customers that are using learning experiences. So this is in education, and of course, similar learning experience are also used for commercial customers. So that's why when we talk about 3DEXPERIENCE, we talk about a modern tool. It's a tool that is already used by the employers of your students. So this is something that it's always nice to bear in mind whenever we talk about employability of the students. Then I will highlight during this next hour that the platform is accessible from everywhere, as well as the learning experience libraries that are accessible from everywhere, because essentially they are an online tool, web-based. So as long as you have a device with a browser, you will be able to access learning experience libraries, learning materials, as well as the platform itself. Because we will see in a second, but the majority of the widgets are web-based, so you actually are able to access results, models, information from your class, from your students, and students from the teachers, of course, but through just a simple iPad or mobile phone, for example. And then 3DEXPERIENCE EDU for the Dassault System, it's really at the core, the heart of the Dassault System. It's strategically important for us. So what we are developing, and this is a very novel concept, is a global network of 3DEXPERIENCE EDU Center of Excellence. So there are at the moment 5 worldwide, but we plan to have many, many more, and also to establish at least one in Euro North in the next year. So essentially, this Center of Excellence is going to be a hub for teaching and learning 3DEXPERIENCE, but also to connect this to employers and to connect this to the real world prototyping and manufacturing. So it's pretty much a very complex hub that goes from the virtual twin up to the physical prototype. So very exciting there. A bit more about the Dassault System. As long as I'm sure you probably know some of this information, but I normally like to remind to the people where we come from, because at least you have the full picture of why we developed 3DEXPERIENCE platform, because it's something that if you see in this timeline, it seems that have popped up in 2012, but it really comes from our legacy. Dassault Systemes come from a spin out of Dassault Aviation. as you know, probably, Dassault Aviation is a company that is still producing aircraft. So it's a company that actually, it's a manufacturing company, so they actually make things. But in early 80s, basically, there was this trend of moving away from pencil and paper, from pen and paper, and to move towards 3D design. And the Dassault Systems was one of the first that moved towards 3D design with CATIA. Then in the following years, much more information that wasn't just the CAD information were attached to the this virtual design. So, and this was then called the 3D digital mockup. And during this time, basically, the Dassault Systems company emerged from Dassault Aviation, because essentially it was a company dedicated to 3D, to virtual prototyping, and to digital mockup later on in the 90s. Then, after the acquisition of other companies that brought their own knowledge and their own products, and moving away from just the aircraft industry, but also moving towards other manufacturing industries, for example, the transportation one, we moved towards a more organic solution for PLM, that is product lifecycle management, really from the supply chain down to the distribution of the final products. By new acquisitions later in the year 2000s, for example, the acquisition of the simulations brand, then Dassault Systems acquired many more different capabilities. And all these capabilities were needed to be applied to a very complex product. As you can imagine, a 3D design of an aircraft, a CATIA model of an aircraft or a car, it's a very complex assembly with more than 15,000 parts. So you can really imagine that then if you want to simulate something like that, you cannot import and export the assembly. It will take ages for moving from one software to another. So that's why, and in fact, actually that was one of the main requirements, because the customers couldn't wait for 1 week to have the model, the assembly moved from CATIA to the simulation tools, for example. And that's why the Dassault Systems decided to move towards what's the future for us. So it's the 3DEXPERIENCE platform. Essentially, it's a unified environment that is a model-based environment. So it's not file-based environment anymore. So let's say the indexing part is not file-based anymore. So that's why it's incredibly fast to have access to the data, so to the CAD in CATIA, but also to all the metadata that are able to indexing this CAD and full assembly inside the 3DEXPERIENCE platform. If you are already a user, you know this, but in general, the main advantage of 3DEXPERIENCE platform is the fact, and I will highlight this later on, but is the fact that you have your model there, it's ready, it's a real-time updated model, where basically you are working collaboratively between different teams, between different groups, and in particular for you, between the different students within a group that are working on a certain collaborative projects. So the real advantage there is that you will have your model at your fingertips, and you can just select an app. I'll show you in a second what's an app, but just to select a simulation app to actually run simulations on a model that your team has designed on CATIA, for example. But I'll show everything in a minute, because I will demonstrate 3DEXPERIENCE platform live or with some videos. But then finally, what's the future for us is also moving from the traditional products, as you can see here, from aircraft, vehicles. And recently, we also have a virtual twin on 3DEXPERIENCE of an entire city. This is virtual Singapore, where basically we have designed an entire city to optimize the flow of air within within the city to basically have a natural cooling, a better temperature within the city itself, plus other physical properties of the buildings that have been modified to optimize an entire city. Then the most complex system that we are going to simulate and that we want to move towards is the human body, because we are also moving towards integrating more companies that have also some social responsibility against, for example, COVID-19. Recently, we have acquired a company that basically contributed to the development of the majority of the vaccines that now are available for COVID-19, that is now part of the Dassault Systemes. So really creating their virtual twin experience of a human body, where we have, for example, the virtual heart, the virtual lungs that we have recently developed, but also transportation of nutrients and, for example, medicines, drugs inside the bloodstreams and inside cells. But so 3D experience is, as I mentioned to you, it's the joint environment where all our capabilities are naturally flowing. So we have CAD capabilities, and some of you probably know already about CATIA. Some of you maybe comes from SolidWorks brand, but in general, we have those brands that are already available on 3D Experience platform. So those are more related to modeling. Then we have Simulations app, also integrated in 3D Experience. Among this, Simulia, that is basically the simulation brand where we have Abacus, CST, PowerFlow, XFlows, and then other app that are other brands that are also integrated for having this social and collaborative environment where your students and the teachers can actually work. We also embed different industries, as I showed to you before. So the educational one is our 12th industry, essentially, that has been embedded within the 11, let's say, commercial industries. But you see here basically that we get experience from all these industries. So that's very good, because in this way, basically, we don't focus our capabilities only on one particular product, but in general, we have life sciences, so we can diversify a lot, construction, cities, high tech, energy, and so forth. So we really think that 3D experience is important because we believe that it's a platform. It's an integrated environment where people can elevate their role. So you will see this, but essentially, if you are teaching to an engineer, for example, and then that engineer through 3D Experience platform can really have a full collaborative experience for project management, for example, and really understand what are the steps in a real project management, as it will be whenever he gets or she gets employed by an industry, by one of these employer. So that's why really by using 3D Experience as a teaching tool for project collaboration, for project management or product design management, then the engineers can become a real, what we call a business innovator. Similarly, for example, to technicians, then get access to leveraged apps with simulation capabilities. So they are not just focusing on the CAD design itself, but they also focused on, for example, either generative design or to kinematics analysis, dynamic analysis, or even simulations of structural mechanical properties of the CAD design that they are designing on 3D Experience. So why is that? Because 3D Experience is really a tool where you really can move from one application to the other very seamlessly, and the knowledge of all these applications, it's actually leveraged by the 3D Experience platform itself. But enough about explaining what is 3D Experience. So let's go more into the details of what we can find there. So I'll show you in a second, but you're going to find applications. So the famous apps and widgets that you're going to find on 3D Experience, and they are basically they contain all the features that at the moment you find in CATIA, for example. They're going to be embedded in 3DEXPERIENCE through this app. So you will have part design, assembly design, and so forth, so on. Then you will have applications for simulations. So you will have a dedicated app, for example, for physics simulations, for results review, and so forth, so on. Then together with the applications, you will buy learning contents. And those learning contents are free of charge. So if you buy our 3DEXPERIENCE platform, then the learning contents and the learning material are free for you and for your students. So what we said is that you don't need to teach 3DEXPERIENCE platform, because of course, you don't have to teach 3DEXPERIENCE platform, you have to teach with 3DEXPERIENCE platform. So you will focus on the contents of the modules, because of course that's the teacher's job. But what we can help you with is with our learning contents that can be embedded in your module course, in your module contents. And we're happy that if you're going to use our learning contents, even without modifying them, because of course we know that it's time consuming to create new learning modules. So we have ours that are ready for you, or that of course you can also customize with our help. Then learning communities, I will show you at the end of this presentation that we have 2 learning communities. One is for students, one is for academics and for teachers, and that those also are free of charge. And there you can find the peer-to-peer support and the Dassault support as well. It's there 24/7, by the way, so not too bad. Certifications as well, they are available for all the courses, all the modules, so you can or your students can get certified on CATIA, 3DEXPERIENCE, 3DEXPERIENCE platform, SolidWorks, Simulia, simulations, and so forth, so on. We plan to embed new portfolios. For example, the CATIA No Magic is already integrated. This is for model-based system engineering. That is a very hot topic these days. Then we will have Geovia. Actually, we already have Geovia. That is our brand for hard science, and Biovia as well. That is our brand for life science. So we sell different packages depending on your needs, of course. So if you are more towards CAD design and teaching CAD, we have dedicated packages for this. But also if you have project management needs for teaching, we have dedicated packages for this, and simulations as well. So packages for all the needs. And I didn't mention this, or maybe I mentioned very quickly, but 3DEXPERIENCE platform, and I have a slide now in a second, but it's based on cloud. So why cloud? Well, definitely the main advantages of cloud, among the many advantages of cloud is the fact that it's always there, it's always on, it's always available, can be accessed from literally everywhere. So it's not an on-premise installation that you have to be physically present in a location. So you can imagine that, for example, during pandemics, this was absolutely needed because the students were working from home. So cloud really helped this. And then, of course, installation. So when we talk about installation and deployment from your IT department, then, of course, it's easy for them to install and update cloud packages because the installation comes from the cloud itself. So we sell together with the apps and what are called the roles. So basically, when with the applications that we sell, we also sell cloud space. And cloud space, of course, depends on how big the license is that you need. So if you need it for a class of 30 people or 300 people, then we have different prices and different cloud storage sold with the license. So if you have any more question about this, specifically about the packages, pricing, and so far, so on, please contact either myself or Martin. Of course, Martin is your main point of contact there. So please do not hesitate. So I now want to go into 3DEXPERIENCE platform and show to you a bit more about management of 3DEXPERIENCE platform and what you actually get whenever you buy 3DEXPERIENCE platform. So I mentioned to you before that 3DEXPERIENCE platform is on cloud. So essentially, all the universities are going to be referred to the same cloud where each university will have its own tenant. So when we talk about tenant, we talk about maximum level of security of your data and information. So even though it's the same cloud, each university will have their own private space that is absolutely safe. So it's a single place, but you can also imagine that if needed, it's also the place where it's possible to implement collaboration. So it's the native place where you can actually implement collaboration naturally. So let me now show to you what is 3DEXPERIENCE platform. So very quickly, whenever you get access to 3DEXPERIENCE, you will get an invitation email. I'm skipping the invitation email here, but basically you have one link that you have to click, and this one basically is the 3DEXPERIENCE platform environment. So it's intuitive to use, but in any case, we have some sort of guiding system that guides you through step by step from installation down to what it is 3DEXPERIENCE platform. But today I want to show to you what it is 3DEXPERIENCE platform. And in general, whenever you will receive this invitation to access to the platform, teachers or at least one teacher will get, or somebody from IT, I mean, depends on what's your preferred organization at your university, but we'll have this platform management role. So in the platform management role, you can see that basically you will be able to invite members, create communities, share contents, create dashboards, and so far so on. So, but let's start from the first step, that is inviting members. So essentially here you will be able to invite people that come from different classes, for example. So if we talk about teaching, then it's natural to create a group of users, and basically you can import members here and basically select a file with the names of the students that are going to be enrolled to a certain class, for example. And you can then create a personalized message and so far so on, and then you can embed all of them in a group. So that is easier to assign to them whatever needs to be assigned, any privileges or anything that I will share in a second to you. So here you can import a file and essentially then assign roles or additional apps. So you will have these different members, and then the second step is going to be to assign roles. What are the roles? So by roles, we mean essentially this. So if you see, I have hit this big compass here that you can see on the right hand side. If you are familiar with 3DEXPERIENCE, you know that basically this is the main place to go. So anything that you need, probably it's stored here. So after you click on the compass, you will see that you get different parts here. The first one is about roles. So basically roles means that what I was mentioning to you before. So if you are going to teach CAD, for example, it's very likely that you're going to purchase a certain package that might be called in different ways, but in general, it's 3D design or 3D innovator or 3D some other names, because we have different packages for this. So that's why I said if you have your needs, please contact Martin, because he will be able to share with you what's the best package for you to actually access these different roles. And here we also have an entire link where basically you can see that those different packages that I mentioned to you before, they are also assigned then to specific roles. The roles are here, and you can see that there might be many roles associated, for example, to this, that is the 3D engineer pack. So this is one of the most, let's say, complete package that you can purchase. And within this package, you can see that there are many different roles here, for example, for fluid simulation, generative design, immersive collaborative design, mechanical designer, mold, tolerancing, virtual reality, and then some simulation tools like durability, fluid, plastic injection, and so far so on. So this is because it's a really complete package where you actually have 21 different roles. But let's go back to our platform and just to show to you basically this one role that is called 3D Innovator. It's just one of example, but if you are interested in generative design, this might be one good role that you want to purchase. So Martin can then advise which roles are more suitable to your needs, but essentially this one is for generative design. And then managing the generative design with some collaborative tasks. So there is always some project management tools that your students should be able to use. And it's very simple to understand why, because of course students might be working together in a group, together in a class. So several students might be designing different parts in a complex assembly. So it is necessary to have some sort of project management or some sort of project or that the students need to put together and then follow during the assignment. So you always have some collaborative task widgets that are also available. So it's not just matter of creating the design or to design your CAD, but also then to handle this in a project-based or in model-based learning. So something that you can then exploit our collaborative task, for example. So, so this is what we called roles. And then when you invite the different members of your class, the different students in your class, you can assign them different roles. So this is, of course, particularly useful because in this way you are able also to manage privileges, which is quite good. So in this way, basically, the platform manager roles is only associated to the people that are actually platform managers, either the teachers or the IT people. But then, of course, if your students need to create some generative design for their assignment, you can assign to them only specific roles that are related to generative design and project management, for example. You have seen that when I hit roles, I have many of those small icons that are called widgets. I'll show you in a second what's a widget and how you can use it. But in general, when you set up your class with and you import the different members, you can also grant different roles here. So you can see how many roles we actually have, production engineer, program managers, and so far so on. And then what you can do is to actually share the contents within a certain collaborative space. So essentially, your class, you can have multiple classes or you can have multiple groups inside a certain class. And each groups, for example, doesn't need, or actually they shouldn't see the contents of other groups. So for example, if you are assigning them a certain task or a certain, so if they are assessed on a certain collaborative project, so they cannot see what other groups are doing. So that's where basically you need to create separate what we call collaborative spaces. So these collaborative spaces, then you can assign people to a certain collaborative space, and in particular, you can assign groups to that particular collaborative space. And in that way, each group will only see the contents of that collaborative space. Why am I saying this? Because we have to remember that we are on cloud. So on cloud, all the information that is going to be stored is going to be shared among all the people that are on that particular tenant on that cloud. So for example, in your case, you're going to have a certain tenant for the university. And then within that university, you're going to have your course. So you have to create your own, let's say, platform environment. But then within this platform environment, it's very likely that you want to create some separate spaces where the students will only access that own space. So space A for the class A, space B for the class B, and so far so on. So in this way, you will be able to, let's say, keep the data private among the different groups. And this is always possible by creating collaborative space, managing permission, and say, for example, a certain group can access only a certain collaborative space. So that's all about platform management. So in general, it's relatively straightforward and there are rules that you have to follow. So we have best practices that we can share with you, of course, when you're going to set up your courses and when you want to set up your classes. But in general, as long as you plan in advance, so as long as you know in advance how many students you have and you know their email addresses, everything gets relatively easy to organize. And also why it is important to have this organization at the very beginning, because then it's easier to delete the data at the end. Because clearly, then you want to allocate the licenses again to the next class, to the next group of classes in the next semesters, for example. So you want, of course, to reuse your licenses, but also to reuse the cloud space. Because, of course, you don't want to get it crowded with things that are not useful anymore, because you have a new class, you have new people, so you want to free up spaces on your cloud space. So all this in terms of platform management can be done very easily on 3DEXPERIENCE, and we have dedicated instructions for you. So please let me know if you are interested on this, and I will be happy to share with you. But coming back to 3DEXPERIENCE, and also for people that haven't seen 3DEXPERIENCE before, let's have a dig on what we talk about here. So what's a dashboard? So the dashboard is this collection of what we call tabs, but let me go into a platform, into a dashboard that is a bit less crowded. So you can find dashboards here. You can create, of course, your own dashboard. And in this case, I have this dashboard here that is quite useful for me. It's called my first dashboard. And here I can, for example, add a new tab. So you can see that a tab basically is a clean slate where you can drag and drop apps. So why I create dashboards? Dashboards can be shared. So in the dashboard, you can put several tabs. Those are similar. I don't want to say folders, because of course here we don't talk about file-based anymore. We talk about model-based, but essentially you have this very nicely organized way to share information with your students. So for example, sharing instructions for the module can be done through a certain specific tab, and then you can add widgets, videos, and so far so on. So I'll share to you in a second how you can do it. But basically, you just create a new tab. You can rename this tab saying, for example, this is my course, mechanical design course. And then you can either share the dashboard with the students by just clicking sharing here, and then you can either add names or you can add groups. So in this case, that's why it's very useful to have a group with all the names of the student grouped in, and then you can go on either the dashboard or you can share the tab instead. So for example, if you want to share just this tab with a certain group of people and then a second tab with another group of people, this is something that you can do very easily. So all these things can be done here. And what do you put on the tab? I said you just drag and drop your apps. So for example, in this case, I'm interested in, let's say, this type of applications here. So I just go on my apps here that I can also drag on my favorite apps, as you can see here. And then, for example, say I want to add some generative design widget, and then I want to add some project planning widget for example, yeah. So whatever you are then interested in, for example, if you want to add some media links because you have some resources on some links in, for example, on the World Wide Web. So why basically we do this? I mean, it's very easy. So for example, now if we expand this here in generative design, we will be able to create our own model. So here, then the students can follow the instructions and create their own model. And then in the next part of the presentation, I'll show you also a bit more about part design, shape design, assembly design, and so far so on. But in this case here, I'm just showing to you how you handle these widgets. So once you have your model created in CATIA, then you can just save it, and all the models and all the files and all the information are going to be stored not in a particular place. They are going to be stored in the inside 3DEXPERIENCE in the cloud. So that information will then be available for the rest of the students in that group to be accessed and to be, for example, embedded in a project planning, where, for example, you have so where, for example, you have a different task, and one task can be create a new model. So then if the model has been created, then I can just add my model here as an attachment or as a deliverable if the KPI, if the deliverable was actually the model. And then say, for example, this one, I can add some descriptions. I can add different people, assign this task to the different people and say, for example, I was the designer and say, I finished this design, please person B check the design is good or not. So this is where it really gets a very collaborative environment. So and then once I'm happy with this and I design my own project, my own model, I can just say, okay, I'm working on it. But then in the end, I can say that it's completed. So I can make the model available for the next person that has to work on this, or to the teacher that has to mark the assignments, for example, and to evaluate that the model was good or not. So in general, this is how you would use it. The nice thing about having everything embedded on a tab is that it's really easy to move from one tab to the other. You can even drag and drop objects, model from one place to the other, and you can easily select contents, for example, here. So you can see that I can just access my contents, and in 3DEXPERIENCE then we have a very easy and nice way to basically automatically tag all your model and all the things that you're going to create, and we have this sort of 6W tag, as we call, to easily search among the contents. So you can search for example, for the people that have created it, or the data that has been created, and so far so on. So once then you select something in 3DEXPERIENCE, you can just open it, let's say, with the correct app. So essentially you select this one here, and let's say it was a CATIA model, then you go on the related CATIA app, you select that app, and that one will just open the object that you have just selected. So other useful things is, for example, the fact that if you are tagging another group of people, or if you are tagging a specific person, like for example, student that tags another student, of course, as long as that student is on 3DEXPERIENCE, he or she will get a notification here. That is also very useful, because in this way, it's easy to inspect, for example, when somebody else has finished the project, then I can immediately start working on the second part of the project if I was waiting for something from another student or from another collaborator. I think that's more or less enough. We have, of course, communities as well, where we can actually share information. This is more like a social collaboration and innovation tool that maybe I can show you just in a second here. But basically, I don't have many communities here, but you can create your own communities and share it with only a certain members. So like, again, the students in a group, and then here we can put information, any type of information that you want. So this is about 3D experience and in general how it works. Now I want to go through some more, let's say, information about CATIA and 3D experience, collaborative design, and how basically somebody that knows about CATIA V5 then can find similar capabilities into 3D experience. So without further ado, let's go on. This first video basically shows how you can use a tool that's called Part Design. That is essentially this app that is used to designing a part. So Part Design is let's say, the fundamental building block for a complex assembly design and review. So the user basically starts by reserving a part, designing the part, and then unreserving it. So in this way, then you can use the collaborative task to complete the design and make it available for the rest of the team. Part Design also have messaging and co-reviewing features for which each member of the group is able to provide a feedback on the part that has been designed. So this is also very important when we talk about assembly design. That is my next video, essentially, because all the parts needs to be allocated, let's say frozen, while a person is working on it, before then making it available again to be embedded in a more complex assembly. So this is particularly important because, of course, when we design an assembly, then many people are going to contribute to the same assembly design. So we want all the parts to be up to date and to the most updated design. So when we talk about assembly design, the assembly design here that I'm going to show in this video is an app that is used to put together different parts. Those different parts are embedded in a complex and structured assembly, as the one that we see here. The app is used to create engineering connection to assemble parts to allow specific motion between them. So when multiple users access the part from an assembly together at one time, saving the modifications in the assembly can be very complicated. So the 3D experience platform tools help to set up best practice in a correct process of revisions in a similar scenario. Then it will be possible also in assembly design to evaluate an assembly, which helps understanding how the assembly can be finalized and analyzed. For example, we can check different degrees of freedom, weight distribution, the interferences between parts, and manage the list of issues that then needs to be sorted. Finally, it is possible to simulate mechanism with kinematics. It is possible to create, validate, and analyze mechanisms to observe the movements of the parts, and also to create a sweep, volumes of moving parts, and to manage the list of issues that needs to be sorted. Finally, in this example, we see that it's possible to embed the effects of dynamic parameters as well, such as gravity, for example, and to simulate and record a fully dynamic scenario. So all these things from CATIA are also embedded in 3D experience. We also mentioned several times that we are in a collaborative environment, and this really enables the students to learn how to work in a collaborative review environment. That is basically the basis of the agile process that is adopted by the majority of the companies these days. So because we are in a real-time collaborative environment, essentially every user is able to check at any time and from everywhere the current status of the project. So students basically learn how a real collaborative industry innovator works. Every team member can explore the product structure even from a web browser. So we have seen before the widgets that are a web browser based tool, and you can see that the product structure can be visualized there. It is possible for both students and teachers to create a 3D markup to suggest changes in the context of the design. So the ability of 3D communicates all the revealing issue in the design process. So the issue management feature can be exploited from 3DEXPERIENCE platform, and based on the highlighted issue, the teachers, in this case, for example, can suggest a design modification. Then the student can check the recommendations, apply the recommendations with the CATIA Design App Suite. And finally, the teacher can use other functionality to test that the modification are actually solving the problem. And we will see this in a second with this Innovia app. So essentially, the teacher can just inspect that the modification that has been applied by the students actually meet the requirements. So it is a real chain of suggestions, modification, checks, and approval. And this one can be done at different levels and then sent back to the students. So it is really an interactive process at this point. So in general, in 3DEXPERIENCE, we have many tools for fast collaborative integration that enables to implement the so-called agile process that I mentioned to you before. So very similar to what the students need to do whenever he's going to be or she is going to be employed in industry. And last but not least, we have spoken about mechanism with kinematics and certain degrees of dynamics, but then of course there are also more complex simulations that can be run, some sort of virtual testing. So on top of the design, assembly design and collaborative project environment, the 3DEXPERIENCE platform enables the creation of realistic virtual products through simulations. In particular, Abacus capabilities. For those who know, Abacus is a very consolidated structural mechanics simulations tool. So these capabilities are integrated and allow for advanced structural simulations. So 3DEXPERIENCE allows to model complex properties such as contacts, complex material, large deformation, and high speed events. Not only structural simulations, but also flow. So fluid simulation can be easily adopted by the students by using 3DEXPERIENCE platform. We will see in a minute, but it's very simple to set up a simulation. And in addition to the previously described modeling app, it's possible to describe internal, external flow scenarios, and the simulation is fully guided through the modeling process. Complex flow condition can be modeled, including compressibility, mode number up to 3, as well as conjugate heat transfer and rotating objects. Since all the students will work on a unified platform, they can just select a model and then open the simulation app. This adds the simulation tool to the action bar that you see on the left. So, for example, we can simulate the structural response of a steering wheel for a Formula SAE car, like in this case. So first, we can simplify the geometry and apply the required meshing rules. So in this case, a combination of quad and that mesh. Then, for example, in this case, we are also simplifying a bearing as a rigid body to create a virtual bolt, like in this case. Then we can apply loads and restraints and use multiple steps for the different simulations. Also, contact properties such as friction can be included. After running the simulation, you can see that the results are visualized and can be validated to evaluate and eventually modify the design. This is the last example for fluid simulation to see how the angle of attack affects the drag in lifting the car rear spoiler. The assistant on the right describes the steps to set up the simulation. So the flow domain can be defined as well as boundary conditions and mesh. When the simulation is completed, the flow can be visualized and the drag extracted. Then it's easy to change the angle of attack for the upper airfoil and evaluate the effect of this on drag and lift. So I hope that this has given you an overview also about how 3DEXPERIENCE is actually used in real project-based learning in a collaborative environment, and also in general, how the students can actually access many tools at the same time from the same GUI. So they can just learn the same GUI and access simulations, modeling, collaborative tasks, project management tasks, and so project management apps, and so far so on. But of course, you might need help at a certain point. So this is absolutely fine. We cover you. We have two communities. One is for academics, so it's for teachers. This is the first, let's say, starting point where teachers can get support. So you can get support from the Dassault Systemes. So we are answering your questions by basically through the communities, and you can also learn from the peers. So you will get also many documents there in the wiki section. So if you are already familiar with it, but if you need any help and it's the first time that you're using the communities, please let us know. But in the wiki section, you can get also a lot of information about examples of classroom material, of examples that have been that have been developed by the Dassault Systemes, and also examples of of lessons or courses that have been developed by your peers. So also other teachers around the world that are using the same academic community. So this is very important, and you are free as long as you have a 3DEXPERIENCE account to access this community. So please let us know if you need any access, any help with the access. Very similarly, there is a community for students. So teachers can just refer the students to this community because it's very similar to the previous one, with a bit less material about platform administration, for example, but there is plenty of useful material for the students to learn. So this is where the students can get a lot more information. So if you need any help, any support also in the learning process, either you go on these communities or please contact us. And as I said, there is plenty of learning materials there, as well as the learning materials on the EDU space, that is the educational space on 3DEXPERIENCE, where you can get teaching and learning courses. So now in the next 3 minutes, so before your questions, I just want to summarize what are the key benefits of 3DEXPERIENCE platform for EDU and why we think that it's the future tool that you should use for your project-based teaching and project-based learning. So it is cloud-based, as I mentioned to you before. It's simple to install, and it's simple to install updates. There is less investment needed on high specs hardware, for example, and also the contents can be accessed from everywhere. So 3DEXPERIENCE platform widgets are web-based, so models and information that are stored in 3DEXPERIENCE cloud, they can literally be accessed everywhere, anytime, at any time. It's also a highly collaborative environment where you can basically chat with your peer and where the peer actually access the same design tools and the same model and same information at the same time. So it's easy to implement an agile way of working, as I showed to you before. Of course, there are rules that you need to follow, but as long as the students learn these rules, it's also very important for him or her, because then later on they have to get into a real industrial world where this agile way of working is actually implemented. So you can, in this way, overcome the typical limitations of what we call working in silos, where each department do their own design, and then we have to meet together these different design requirements. It's a mess, and there is an enormous delay in the time to market. It's a model-based 3DEXPERIENCE platform. So what I mentioned to you before, it's the single source of truth. The model is always the most up to date. It's always the last version. You don't have to worry even more about versioning or about sharing files with USB sticks or via emails where you have this V11, V12 point something that I used to have in the past that is a mess. In this way, everything is much neat and much simple to manage. And finally, it's a unified working environment and GUI. So you can really leverage knowledge and you don't have to worry anymore about learning different GUIs. The student can just access one environment and learn on that environment. So he can focus or she can focus much more on the contents of the course rather than learning 300 different software GUI. So I hope that this presentation was let's say, was giving you some information, some additional information. And now we have about 0 minutes, but we are almost out of time. But if you have any question and you want me to answer any question, please let me know. So please write it in the chat.
Thank you, Tamara, so much. This was the I'm speechless. So that was so great in 1 hour to tell the customers how they should in the future or at this moment already how they should collaborate and in academics and for the students and for the teachers to make their life a lot of easier than before. Yes, so this was very deep and a lot of information in short time. So if any of you wish to contact us directly, that's more than welcome, and we can do that for your privately and for your university where you can ask more people to come and so on. So this is the first step to start the communication, and for many of you we already have that communication. So but always it's good to talk and make communication, and if you have a question, just write it, or as I told, contact directly to us, and we are pleased to communicate with you. So if there is no any, I thank you for the participation, and let's talk later privately. So big thanks for this, and let's talk. Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you, Tamara.
Thanks, Martin. Bye-bye.
Okay, bye.
Bye-bye.